The sun had just barely crept up over the horizon when Miss Ebube Nwokedi unlocked the gate to Omiala Secondary School, a dusty public school on the outskirts of Oyo State. Slivers of morning light sifted through broken windows, pencils left on desks, chalk dust dancing in motes of gold. The air smelled of damp boards, mildew, and old books. The walls were cracked, the paint peeling, the desks showing decades of neglect. Ebube was in her late 30s, her skin a rich, dark ebony tone, hands calloused from years of writing with scarce chalk and under-resourced classrooms. Her sandals were worn, leather cracked and soles thinning, but she walked with quiet dignity. Her hair was pulled back into a simple bun, her blouse faded but clean, her skirt plain wrapper style. No designer trappings, just the portrait of a woman who gives what she has, even when it's little. She had come early today, carrying a small basin of water and cloth to clean the old staff room, which had been abandoned by most teachers. The room smelled stale, with rotting wood floorboards, broken chairs, rusted hinge handles. Ebube lifted one of the desks, a long, slim wooden desk, the wood swollen from termites, the drawer creaking. As she scrubbed beneath it, she noticed something odd, a sliver of yellowed paper tucked under the bottom of a false panel in the drawer. Her heart skipped. Curious, Ebube pried open the false bottom. Inside, an envelope. Brown, fragile, edges frayed, seal broken. She hesitated. Her mind raced. She carried it to her classroom, closed the door, fingers trembling as she opened it. Inside were several papers, land ownership documents, deeds for school land, signatures forged, and a list of names of politicians, local land grabbers, one of which glowed in her mind. Honorable Minister Adebayo Olanrewaju, Minister of Education. The paper's ink was faded but legible. Her breath tightened. Flashbacks pressed on her mind. Her late brother Obinna, who had gone to Abuja years ago. He had called home once, terrified. He hinted at papers, wrongdoing in the ministry. Then, he vanished. The family said he died in a car crash. Ebube believed. She grieved. But now, reading forged signatures, she felt betrayal and doubt. Her mind swirled with questions. If her brother tried to stop a land scam, did these papers relate? Did Minister Olanrewaju benefit from the stolen lands? Would her brother still be alive if he had spoken up? The school principal, Mr. Adebowale, a thin, severe man with skin like polished wood and eyes sharp as flint, knocked at her classroom door. "Ebube," he said softly, "I heard you found something. Don't make waves. Return that envelope." Quietly, he leaned in. "For your own good." Ebube's hands clenched. She thought of Obinna, of justice, of courage. "No," she said, "this belongs to more than me." That evening, Ebube walked home over dusty roads, crickets chirping, distant traffic humming, the envelope heavy in her bag. She feared purse snatchers. She feared what exposure would bring. Yet intrigue pulsed stronger than fear. At home, she lit one small lamp, sat at her wooden table with a cup of gari and water. Across the table, her friend Chika, journalist with fierce eyes and thick glasses, dark skin glinting in lamplight, urged her to let the story out. Chika leaned over the documents. "Ebube, this is huge. It could explain Obinna's disappearance. We must investigate." Ebube nodded, voice hushed. "But if Adebayo Olanrewaju is involved, they'll come for me." They made plans, researched the land deeds, traced signatures, talked to witnesses. Chika promised support and anonymity where possible. That night, Ebube sat up past midnight. Dreams restless. Doors creaked. Shadows stretched across her walls. Suddenly, her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She frowned. She answered after a moment. "Put the envelope back, now." The voice was muffled, low, threat-masked. Ebube's heart hammered. She closed her eyes. The room felt too tight. Her fingers shook, clutching her breath. Who placed the envelope there and who's watching her now? Ebube Nwokedi woke in the thin pre-dawn light, birds already chirping in Nsukka's soft hills. She was just 7 when her brother, Obinna, came home that morning in his crisp shirt, dark skin shining, eyes wide with hope. Their mother smiled, dark ebony skin, gentle wrinkles around her eyes. Ebube, dark-skinned as well, ran barefoot across dusty yard, her dress patched but cleaned. Obina held an envelope. He said he had seen something wrong at work, something about a piece of land, someone's signature forged. But their father, stern and weary, told him not to speak. Obina said he would anyway for truth. Flash forward. Obina, now in his mid-20s, idealistic and proud. British height, lean posture, dark skin, crisp suit, tie slightly loosened. He worked at Abuja in the Ministry of Housing. He believed service meant sacrifice. He found allocations were lopsided, public land being sold to politicians at cheap rates, while promises of low-cost housing for the poor remained on paper. He pulled files late nights, copies hidden under his mattress. He sent letters. He tried to sound alarms. One evening he came home late, bruised knuckles hidden under his coat, saying he'd been threatened. Ebube, younger, looked up to him. She trusted his voice, his moral code. Then one day, Obina never returned from work. His desk was empty, his files locked. His colleagues said he left Abuja for a retreat. Days passed. A car accident. A suicide. The national paper printed the accident. The family got a telegram. Dark sketches of rumors, but no body, no investigation. The funeral was small. Ebube carried her brother's shoes in a cloth, drying tears in hidden corners. After that, she stopped dreaming of becoming a lawyer. She turned to teaching, raising her niece Obina's daughter, carrying his memory in her heart. Years drifted by. In Oyo State, Ebube teaches in public school. Chalk dust clouds rise when she writes on the board. Worn sandals slap the cracked floor. Late at night, she reopens the old envelope she found. Her lamp flickers, shadows lengthen. She spreads out the documents. Land, deeds, signatures, political names. She smooths out one page. In the bottom corner she sees a handwriting, O. Nwokedi. It is Obina's signature. A date, 2 days before his disappearance. Her breath catches. Her pulse slams in her throat. The paper trembles under her fingers. He must have known, she whispers. She rereads a forged certificate of sale for plot of land meant for school housing, one that Obina had included in his protests. It matched deeds among the envelope's pile. Her heart sinks. The truth may have killed him. Ebube dresses early and steps out to visit Obina's grave. Lagos and Suka Road, dawn mist rolling back. She wears simple wrapper, dark blouse, scarf over her hair, sandals cracked. Her skin glows faint in the soft light, tears already lined beneath her eyes. She arrives at the cemetery, the gate rusted, bushes overgrown. She kneels, touches Obina's tombstone, carved name nearly worn. Obina Nwokedi, lover of truth. She slides her fingers over the letters, leaves behind a single flower. She promises, I will find them. I will make them pay. They will know your name. That afternoon, in Ebube's modest home, she hears the low hum of an engine. She glances out window. A black car, tinted windows, slow turning. Dark-skinned men inside, sleek shoe leather shining. They park for a moment in front of neighbor's compound, then move. Ebube holds still, heart pounding. She wonders if they saw her carrying the envelope. She wonders if Obina's enemies have found her trail. Meanwhile, Chika, journalist friend, sharp, browned skin, thick glasses, short natural hair traces, origins of some documents. In a small office with walls, plastered with old newspaper clippings, she compares registry numbers. School lands sold illegally in 5 states: Lagos, Ogun, Oyo, Kaduna, Osun. She makes lists. She taps into a network of whistleblowers. She tracks signatures, dates, erasures in registry. She begins putting together map of plots whose ownership transfers never made sense. She texts Ebube with names. This is bigger than one brother. This is a pattern. Ebube listens in silence, hope and fear tangled. She stares at the envelope contents by lamplight. Her hands shake. She thinks of Obina, raises eyes to ceiling. If you were here, brother, can you see this? Will you forgive me for taking up your mantle? Evening falls. She sorts through more documents. Among them, a dusty photograph drops from behind the land deed. It flickers in the lamplight. A younger Obina, smiling, standing beside Minister Adebayo Olanrewaju, arm around each other's shoulders. Formal attire, polished shoes, the kinds of elites. Obina's face full of pride, but there's also something sad in his eyes. Ebube's throat tightens. Did her brother know the man? Did they once work together? Did betrayal begin from closeness? Chika peers at the photo, whispering, "They were colleagues, trusted. If this is real, it's explosive." Ebube holds the photo close. Her world fractures. The envelope, the signature, the photograph point to Obinna's knowledge, his attempt at justice, and perhaps someone silenced him because he threatened the powerful. Late that night, Ebube lies awake. The moon slides across cracked ceiling. She dreams of Obinna, calling to her. She dreams his voice. Expose them. Her phone buzzes. Unknown number. Silence when she answers. No message. She places the photo in her drawer, closes the envelope, pulls blanket around her. She sleeps trembling. A dusty photograph falls from the envelope. Obinna and Minister Adebayo, smiling as colleagues. In the heart of Victoria Island, Lagos, the sea breeze teased the palms that lined beautifully paved driveways, huge iron gates, polished marble, water features in the driveway. At the top of the steps, under glowing lamps, stood Honorable Adebayo Olanrewaju, Minister of Education, mid-50s. Dark skin polished like ebony. A wide smile that seemed to reassure donors, pockets stuffed with speeches and promises. His tailored cream-colored agbada glowed under the evening lights. A gold cufflink peeked from under a sleeve. A glass of amber brandy rested on a small table beside him. Guests in designer fabrics clapped and drank as he delivered his message of reforming education, of restoring trust and investment. Cameras flashed, journalists nodded, children from underprivileged areas were presented smiling, hands raised, everything perfect. Yet behind those bright smiles, behind those lights and applause, Adebayo's posture tightened, his brows furrowed when he uttered certain phrases: transparency, accountability, justice. He knew the words rang hollow coming from him because he had built much of his success on quiet betrayal. He took a slow sip of brandy off stage later, warm liquid burning past throat, the taste bitter under falsehood. Flashback. Years ago, Ebube Nwokedi, young, idealistic, worked under Adebayo when the latter was just a promising junior official in the Ministry of Housing. Obinna, dark-skinned, earnest face, laugh that lit up corridors, hands always reaching for files. He believed public service could change lives. Adebayo saw his talent used him. Obinna's oversight revealed hidden irregularities. Land allocated illegally, public space sold off cheaply, properties diverted. Adebayo listened sometimes, nodded but eventually turned away. Later, late one night, Obinna's files vanished. Threats followed. Obinna pleaded with Ebube to stay out of his dealings. Adebayo surged ahead. Political allies praised him. Obinna vanished. Adebayo promised an investigation. Nothing ensued. Back in present, Ngozi, Adebayo's wife, elegant, composed, dark skin with a softer glow, fine lines around her eyes, always immaculate in her jewel and lace, sat in their mansion drawing room. She heard her husband's phone ring, an unknown number flashing. She found it, he heard him say in hushed tones after answering. She watched his hand tremble, the slight narrowing of his eyes. She pretended not to notice when he quietly pocketed the envelope after the call, but her heart stirred suspicion. Ngozi had once believed in the man beneath the title. Lately, every secret built walls between them. That evening, Ebube and Chika attended a public policy forum in a banquet hall. The stage glowed under warm lights, banners proclaiming education for all. Children sang, choir voices resonant. Ebube sat among the audience wrappers, simple blouse, envelope hidden in her bag close to her chest. She watched the stage, Chika beside her, camera resting on knee, ready. Adebayo took the podium. The crowd hushed. He spoke eloquently. New schools, better teachers, land granted for school infrastructure. He held up brochures. He promised. He shimmered with charm. Then Ebube's gaze lifted. She caught his eyes, those cold, powerful eyes. Their eyes locked. She felt like the only one in all that room he really saw. He paused mid-sentence. A flicker of recognition, a micro-twitch in his lip. He coughed, cleared throat, resumed as though nothing had happened. The audience applauded. Chika's camera clicked. Close-up. Ebube in the pile of faces, envelope strap barely visible under her lap. Adebayo continued, voice controlled. But on his face, shock, Later that night, back at her home, Ebube walked slowly through her compound, the envelope inside her bag. She smelled earth, damp grass, cicadas muted but buzzing. The neighbor's door creaked. A black sedan idled across the street, tinted windows, 2 men inside. Ebube froze. Her pulse pounded. They drove off slowly. She swore she saw a camera flash. In the mansion, Adebayo's personal assistant, Mr. Uche, dark-skinned, neatly dressed, hands trembling as he typed on laptop. A phone call came in. "Track that woman," a voice said over the receiver. Uche's breath caught. He dropped pen. A shadow passed his eyes. He looked at his screen. Headline drafts flagged. Surveillance options. Field agents. Late into the night, Ebube lay on her bed, sari folded, lamp dim. The envelope's papers spread on her small desk: photos, deeds, signature, list of names. She rechecked one document. Forged signature. One photograph tucked behind someone had torn part of its edge. She pressed her finger to the photo, recognizing Adebayo and Obinna standing together in earlier days. It was cheerful, but to her it was poison. A noise at the window, a creak, a figure moving outside. She sat up, heart hammering, peered through mosquito net. Nothing, just moonlight and trees. Someone breaks into her house, but nothing is stolen, only a torn photo is left behind. The heat in the classroom was oppressive, even though the windows were thrown open. Dust motes drifted in sunlight, chalk scribed faintly on green boards, the faint hum of cicadas beyond the roof. Ebube Nwokedi had stayed after lunch, collecting papers, while students drifted out to the yard. The desks creaked. Her sandals squeaked on the floor. She had the envelope safe in her bag, heart still pounding from what she had seen at the public forum. Suddenly, the door opened gently. "Miss Nwokedi?" came a voice low, careful, dark-skinned. A man walked in, mid-40s, skin ebony, salt and pepper beard, shirt tucked neatly into slacks though worn, eyes alert behind wire-rimmed glasses. He held a battered briefcase. He introduced himself, Mr. Coyote. Former whistleblower, he said he had worked under Adebayo Olanrewaju years ago in the Ministry of Housing, alongside Obinna. His voice shook when he mentioned Obinna's name. Ebube stiffened. Chika had joined her earlier, observing, notebook open. For once, Chika's skepticism softened at Coyote's presence. Coyote set down the briefcase on a battered desk. He opened it. Photocopies, maps, land registry, abstracts, rust-colored files, names, dates. He pulled out one document showing how large tracts of public school land had been quietly converted to luxury estates, plots sold under false pretenses, deed frauds, forged signatures, plots in Lagos, Ogun, Oyo. He tapped one list, names of developers, politicians, complicit officials. Ebube's breath caught. The documents matched some in her envelope. He whispered, "These papers are enough to shake a government." Ebube trembled. "But how did you get all this?" she asked. Coyote explained. Obinna had archiving habit. Before vanishing, he'd saved evidence photos, deed copies, messages. Coyote, fearing for his life, kept hidden pieces. Ebube's envelope was just one piece of the archive. Chika, leaning against a desk, raised her eyebrow. "Why you now, Mr. Coyote?" she asked. "Why approach me? Why risk this?" Coyote's eyes flicked to Ebube. "Because someone has the rest. Someone wants it back. And Obinna's name is getting dragged through mud. This must come to light." Meanwhile, at the minister's mansion, Honorable Adebayo Olanrewaju sat in front of his large, mirrored vanity, adjusting his cufflinks. His skin glowed under the warm lamplight, his tailored suit immaculate. He picked up a brandy glass, paused. A knock. Alhaji Mukhtar, a godfather figure, stepped in. Dark skin, expensive agbada, heavy rings, soft but threatening voice. His presence filled the room. Mukhtar placed a hand on Adebayo's shoulder, tight. "Remember," he said, "people who slip vanish quietly, eyes watching, ears listening. Keep your balance, minister." Adebayo swallowed hard. The brandy trembled in his fingers. He nodded, eyes momentarily glassy. The lie weighed upon him. Back at the school, word began to spread quietly. Chika published a brief teaser in her online column. Old desk, New Secrets. The article included a grainy photo of the envelope, maps of land parcels, hints at scandal. People began whispering. Students asked Ebube strange questions. Some parents called the school to ask about land near their homes. Government agents arrived at the school firm, polite but invasive. Two men in black suits, faces stern, dark skin, badges obscured. They asked routine questions about infrastructure, classrooms, enrollment numbers. They asked for Ebube's lesson plans, teacher registration. They left with smiles, but their eyes held warning. That evening, Ebube walked home with Chika just as the sun dipped. The sky was bruised purple. Her sandals slapped on the dusty road. She sensed someone following. A sleek car with tinted windows parked across the street. She quickened pace. Chika tugged her arm. They stopped. The car rolled off silently. Ebube's heart thudded. She clutched the envelope in her bag like a shield. Early next morning, Ebube awoke to a message: "Meet me at the old boardroom at the school at noon." Alone, no name. Her stomach knotted. Against her better judgment, she agreed with Chika's insistence on caution. She arrived at the boardroom, a cold, empty room with dusty chairs, broken windows letting in bright, harsh light. No one was there. She waited. As noon passed, silence roared. She turned to leave and saw the boardroom door open behind her bag. On the floor lay a single torn photograph. Obinna and Minister Adebayo, smiling as colleagues, bound together. Nothing else. Envelope and documents untouched. No theft, just that image dropped like a warning. She picked up the photograph, fingers trembling. Dust from the doorframe, light sliding in through broken window panes. The room felt small, empty, heavy. By evening, Coyote's phone was unanswered. No reply. The briefcase at his apartment found trashed, files missing. His flat door forced, papers scattered. His phone off. Chika called contacts. No one knows where he islanded. Ebube looked at the torn photograph in her hand, its edges brittle. Someone is watching. Someone is striking back. Mr. Coyote disappears the next day, his phone off, apartment trashed. Late afternoon sunlight filtered through the dusty windows of Chika's small studio, illuminating stacks of paper, tangled cords, camera gear. The walls, once neutral beige, were now adorned with pinned-up photos, maps, documents, land deeds, the envelope Ebube had found. Chika, dark ebony skin glowing in the glow of screens, tied back her natural hair, her glasses catching reflections of code and transcripts. She breathing deeply, preparing something she'd only imagined before. Going public. Beside her stood Ebube, skirt patched, blouse simple but ironed, skin tired but eyes wide with resolve. "Are you ready?" Chika asked, voice steady. Ebube nodded. Chika pressed record, her fingers hovering. Then, with trembling hands, she narrated the exposé, narrated how the envelope was found, how her brother Obinna had vanished after uncovering wrongdoings, how forged signatures were used to transfer school land for luxury estates, implicating Minister Adebayo Olanrewaju. Hidden voices recorded long ago, coded documents, maps, deeds, timelines all revealed. Ebube's voice broke when she said Obinna's signature appeared. The camera captured every tear. By midnight, the video was live on YouTube. Within hours, it gathered thousands of views. By dawn, millions. Comments flooded in anger, shock, hope. Viewers shared screenshots, shared their own stories. Dark-skinned portraits of teachers, students, parents posting, "This is injustice." Social media lit up like morning. Hashtags trended not in image, but online. Justice for Obinna, expose education scam. Chika stayed awake, watching analytics spike. The government responded swiftly. A statement leaked from the minister's office denied everything. They called it fake news. They threatened defamation suits, termination of contract for colleagues sharing unverified content. Chancellor of Education was quoted, off record, as concerned about national stability. The name Ebube Nwokedi began appearing in rumor. Threads, traitor, attention seeker, foreign agent. The next morning, at 8 a.m., Ebube arrived at school. Gates locked. Notice posted, in government, red tape. School closed until structural repairs are completed. Students turned away, teachers confused. The school halls, once echoing chalk knocks, silent. Ebube stared at locked doors, heart sinking, her sandals dangling off one hand. She felt silenced, but viral posts outside suggested otherwise. Inside ministry offices, staff started resigning. Trusted aides requested transfers. Some leaked memos. Some office meetings ended with hushed whispers. Anonymous letters, typed, dropped beneath doors. You too will fall if you speak. Fear rippled among them. Adebayo avoided press, his speeches rehearsed. His hand shook during live TV interviews. A bead of sweat rolled down the side of his brow. He paused mid-sentence, stared off camera, regrouped. Back at Chika's home, late at night, Ebube's inbox flooded. Among messages, one contained a photo. Obinna, shackled at wrists, wearing a blood-stained shirt, eyes hollow, landscape behind him cold and dark. Date stamped 2004. Ebube gasped, recognition of the shirt, of the classroom behind him. Another message, you know where this came from. Fear and determination mingled in her chest. On the same night, Chika arrived at her studio. Her doors bolted from inside. She plugged in her laptop. The screen flickered. A sudden power cut. Backup generators kicked in. Then, when light returned, her laptop was open. Files gone. Videos destroyed. But backup in cloud storage secure. Chika exhaled, relief masked in terror. She looked at the envelope photo, covering camera view. She promised herself, they will not erase this truth. Public outrage grew. Outside Adebayo's office in Abuja, people gathered. Teachers, students, mothers, fathers. Signs held no visible text in visual scene, but imaginations filled them. Faces full of demand. They chanted slogans of justice. Cameras televised tumult. The faces were dark, determined. Under hot sun, voices rose. Media outlets reran clips of Ebube's speech. International human rights watchers tweeted. One evening, as Ebube was driving home a battered compact car on a potholed road at dusk, she sensed headlights creeping behind. The car followed too close. Her breath hitched. She turned onto smaller road. The car accelerated. She panicked, swerved or tried. Then the other car passed too close, wheels screeching. Ebube gripped the steering wheel, heart pounding. No collisions, just fear. That night, in her room, Ebube stayed awake. The envelope opened across desk. She thought of Obinna, of risk, of truth. It was no longer just about justice, it was about survival. Her name was public, her enemies close. She rolled onto her side, dreaming of Jose, of Obinna's voice somewhere out there. Ebube gets a voice note from an anonymous number. Your brother didn't die, he's in Jose. The bus rattled along winding roads that climbed into the cool air of Plateau State. Mist curled over hillsides. Trees loomed in silhouette. Ebube clutched a small knapsack, the envelope secured inside a hidden pocket. Chika sat beside her, map and phone flashlight guiding their route. Their names were changed at lodging, their conversations whispered. They had told no one where they were going. Fear and resolve warred within both of them. They reached a small convent guest house at dusk, its walls white, vines creeping up the plaster, soft candlelight glowing at windows. The air smelled faintly of incense and rain. A nun met them at the gate, stern eyes, gentle voice. She led them inside, offering rice and water. Ebube's feet ached from walking. She sank onto the wooden bench in their room, drying tears she pretended weren't tears. She removed her sandals, patched and worn, and pulled out the repaired shoes she had kept Obinna's shoes too, faded and rough, yet precious. Holding them, she whispered, "For you, brother." Early next morning, Father Dominic arrived, a quiet figure in brown robe, skin dark as rich soil, hair graying at temples, kind eyes lined with fatigue. He welcomed them to the small chapel near the convent. Candles lit on altar. Birds calling outside. He told Ebube of her brother's fate. After speaking out, Obinna had been secretly moved to this region. He was hidden for a year in a makeshift safe house maintained by local church networks. Hidden, but watched. Too afraid to return because his knowledge was lethal. Father Dominic carried out a small leather-bound diary. These were his writings, he said, voice low. Ebube took it, trembling. His last entries described sleepless nights. Guilt. Fear for her. regret that he could not protect her with silence. He wrote of forged land deeds, of threats from powerful people, of a plan to expose everything, but then his entries abruptly stopped. Ebube, with Chika's help, arranged to visit an old relocation camp, a flat stretch of land now overgrown with weeds. Rusted tin shelters collapsed, once full of children and journalists, now abandoned. They walked among broken posts and discarded mattresses. Father Dominic showed them a shallow grave recently unearthed by rains, fresh earth, bones scattered. Ebube's heart pounded. She knelt, brushing soil from fragments of yellowed cloth. But there was no proof that this was Obina's grave. No photograph, no identification. Loss loomed. That evening, a local police officer, tall, dark-skinned, uniform dusty, knocked on their guest house door. He stood in the hallway, lantern in hand, voice low. "Miss Nwokedi, journalist," he said. "Go back tonight. Minister's men are moving through Jos. They know you are here. They want those documents. Leave while you can." Ebube's hand shook. Chika looked to Father Dominic, who nodded silently. They ate rice in tense silence. They packed the diary, the envelope, the shoes into bags. Rain began to fall, a steady patter on tin roof, water pooling outside windows. Ebube sat by the window with diary in lap, pages damp along edges. She read a passage. Obina, writing of his love for her, how he wished she fastened her shoes not out of shame, but out of pride. A tear fell onto the page. She closed eyes. Chika held her hand. Power felt near, danger nearer. The next morning, as dawn broke, they prepared to depart. The bus to Lagos would leave at 7 a.m. Father Dominic stood on the porch, watching them load their humble bags. Ebube handed him the diary. "Use this," she whispered. "If anything happens to me." He nodded, voice firm but sad. Ebube carried her repaired shoes, the envelope, the diary. Chika carried camera gear and some water. They boarded the bus with quiet voices, glancing back at the convent's silhouette. As they rolled away, sun rising over hills, clouds parted. The road stretched ahead, potential but dangerous. Ebube counted minutes, every bump a reminder of threat. Then, just as the bus passed the convent gate, a thunderous explosion erupted behind them. The convent building shook. A fiery orange glow leapt upward. Screams, smoke curling. Ebube's heart seized. The bus driver slammed brakes. Panic flared. Windows rattled. Chika gripped Ebube's arm. The diary and envelope pressed tight against her chest. She peeked back, flames and chaos in the morning mist. The road ahead still stretched, but behind was devastation. As they board the bus back to Lagos, a bomb goes off at the convent. Back in Lagos, the air felt heavier than usual. The heat pressed through the tin roofs and cracked pavements. Ebube Nwokedi unlocked her small front door, sandals scuffing the threshold. On her mat lay an unmarked parcel, brown, worn, no return address. Her heart thudded. She carried it inside, lit a single bulb, and sat at her wooden table. Chika was already there, dark ebony skin glowing in lamplight, reading the latest viral headlines. Ebube's fingers trembled as she broke the seal, pulled out a folded envelope of thick paper, handwritten, intimate. She opened it. The script was familiar, her brother Obina's slanted hand. It began, "My dearest Ebube." She paused a breath. Chika leaned in. Tears threatened already. The letter had been written long ago, but marked to send, "Only if anything happened to me." Obina's words poured out, his fear, his terror, and his love. He named names: Minister Adebayo Olanrewaju, Alhaji Mukhtar, several land commissioners, and other high-ranking politicians. He described meetings where parcels of school land were signed off under sweet speeches, then quietly redirected to developers. He described forged signatures, bribes, threats, and surveillance. Obina apologized for not being strong enough to go further. I ran before the noose tightened. But he also insisted Ebube must finish this story, because truth was more than a weapon, it was her birthright. Ebube's throat tightened. She read lines. "If I do not walk home, know that I always walked beside you in heart." Tears fell. She could barely see the paper. Chika's arm around her shoulder, steady. Chika rose early the next morning. She drafted emails, contacted human rights groups, international media outlets, the names list from Obina's letter, scanned documents, backed up files. Links forwarded to BBC, Al Jazeera, DW, Reuters. She posted excerpts redacted only to hide identity of donors, not the accused. Screenshots flooded in. The world looked. Within hours, the story blew open. Headlines in Nigerian papers screamed, "Teacher's letter names ministers. Land scandal goes to top. Obina's truth finally told." TV anchored debates. Experts lectured. Adebayo, at first, issued terse denials. Mukhtar, frozen in pictures. Ministers refused to acknowledge the allegations, but the crowds they gathered, outside Adebayo's ministry offices, people stood with protest signs, chanting, "Honor truth. Where is Obina? Stop land theft." Faces dark, voices loud. Cameras rolled. Social media exploded. One afternoon, news spread. Adebayo canceled all public events, his scheduled speech on education reform scrapped, every appearance postponed, his ministry gates closed. Security vans blocked entrances. The windows of the main office reflected empty streets. The silence was heavy. His aides whispered among themselves. He avoided televised interviews. The man once confident looked over his shoulder now. Meanwhile, Ebube's phone buzzed constantly. Messages from strangers, from local lawyers, from media houses, from family friends, but one notice soured, a legal notice, an order demanding she appear in court accused of espionage and national sabotage. The wording vague but heavy. The documents claimed she had leaked classified materials, endangered national security. Ebube looked at Chika, fear and resolve swirling in her eyes. "I didn't do anything illegal," she said. Chika squeezed her hand. "You told the truth." The walls started closing in. At night, Ebube changed rooms, moved to safe houses, suggested by Chika's contacts. She slept little, heard footsteps outside windows, saw shadows in alleys. But the letter and its names had ignited something too powerful to extinguish. Then, late one evening, Chika's phone buzzed with a secure message from an unknown number. "I have proof. Obina is alive." But detained, scheduled for relocation. Ebube's breath caught. Relocation, a euphemism whispered in prison camps, known among insiders to mean being moved to an undisclosed location, often with no legal process. The message attached a scanned, pixel-blurry photo. Obina, older, hollowed cheeks, behind bars, masked guard in background. No date or label, just that he was alive. Ebube's hands shook. Chika half gasped. The room felt too small. The envelope, the diary, the letter they had all led here. She gathered her courage. Obina is alive, but imprisoned, and scheduled for relocation. The night before the planned raid, a low moon hung over Lagos, its light smeared through clouds. Ebube Nwokedi sat in Chika's flat, soft yellow lamps lit, maps spread over the wooden table. She touched the repaired shoes she carried, fragile reminder of everything she was fighting for. Around them were underground activists and prison lawyers, faces serious, dark ebony skin visible in the glow of laptop. One lawyer, Barrister Musa, tapped his pen. Court order in hand, camera crews poised, legal affidavit signed. They had confirmation. Her brother Obina was alive in a classified federal holding facility near Makurdi. The files were sealed, little public record, but credible, enough to move. At dawn, Ebube disguised herself as a nurse. Crisp white uniform, name tag forged, stethoscope around her neck, skin the same deep ebony, face tempered with resolve. Chika, likewise, dressed as a support nurse assistant, carrying camera gear in a medical bag. Soft footsteps in long corridors of the facility, peeling paint, muted alarm lights, echoing metal doors. Barrister Musa's documents waved. This room, this ward, that block Obina was there. They pressed through, passing uniformed guards. Ebube's heart hammered. A door opened inside. Dim light, bunks arranged close. Obina, older, thinner, beard streaked with gray, sunken cheeks, dark black skin, duller from illness, but eyes still vivid, burning with recognition. He looked up. Shock, joy. Simultaneous, Ebube staggered forward. He rose. Their hands trembled and met. Tears broke. The moment stretched. Siblings reunited after countless nights of longing and unanswered prayers. It felt too sacred to be real. Outside, behind the riot bar wire, cameras rolled. Chika's phone streamed. Viewers around Nigeria and beyond saw Obinna's face, his story. They lied to us. Ebube's cry echoed down the hallway. Guards lunged to stop them, but the camera light exposed everything. The world was watching. Mouths open, hearts breaking. Social media blew up in real time. Word spread fast. In Makurdi, in Abuja, in Lagos, protests erupt, voices gather. Parents, teachers, students, people who had known about missing brothers, missing sisters, missing justice. 3 states, Benue, Lagos, Oyo, filled with marchers carrying shoes, old school shoes, torn sandals as symbols. They chanted, "Truth, release them." The story was no longer just about one man. It was about all the forgotten lives trapped by silence. Ebube, Obinna, Chika, and the legal team retreated to a safe house in Abuja that night. Obinna wrapped in a thin blanket. He coughed. A doctor among the activists patched up his wounds. He was safe for now. Meanwhile, in his high-rise office, Honorable Adebayo Olanrewaju sat with his head in his hands. He watched the news live. Obinna's face on the screen, Ebube shouting truth on camera. His mind reeling. The power structure he built, the whispers he silenced, the names he protected, they were collapsing. His resignation letter, drafted earlier in shame, was leaked to the press, but the signature was missing. He stared at the draft on his desk, hands shaking, gold cufflinks glinting. Minister Adebayo's resignation letter is leaked, but he hasn't signed it yet. The studio lights burned bright. The camera, set on a tripod, fed into multiple screens: national TV, online stream, social media windows. Ebube sat beside Chika, hands trembling, but voice steady in the quiet behind the microphones. The world watched. "Good evening," Chika said, her voice firm. "Tonight we bring you a truth many tried to bury." Ebube Nwokedi stepped into the frame, dark ebony skin drawn, thin, but eyes alive. He stood with the weight of his story on his shoulders. Behind him, the repaired shoes lay on a small pedestal, a symbol of truth not forgotten. He spoke slowly at first, voice husky. "The land scam. Public school lands," he said. "Transferred under forged signatures. Given to developers tied to ministers. Schools closed, communities displaced. Some lands meant for teachers' housing, for classrooms, instead became luxury estates." He named betrayals. Colleagues silenced, warnings ignored. Threats made, torture, nights in detention, long months in makeshift cells. Political threats, disappear and you won't be missed, they said. He spoke of nightmares, of thinking of his sister every moment, of how he stored documents under floorboards, in files that never should have been opened, but which now burned in his hand. The country listened. Families clustered around radios. Students in dorms paused mid-class. Social media lit up. Hashtags trended. Justice for Obinna, education scandal. There were retweets, shares, video clips. People sat in stunned silence in homes, in buses, in church pews. Meanwhile, Honorable Adebayo Olanrewaju was summoned by the Presidential Committee for Integrity Review. White House corridors, polished floors, the heavy doors of Aso Rock. Adebayo, once majestic, now walked with his shoulders slumped, dark skin suit hanging without pride. His face, usually composed, now pale. He was taken into a private room, meeting papers in front of him, ministers seated around. The president himself asked questions. But the hardest part came when Adebayo was alone, or thought to be. In that hidden room, windows curtained, a small table, a recording device quietly placed inside a flower vase. Adebayo, tearful, voice quivering, admitted everything. His role in forging signatures, in turning Otunbu land deals, in ordering Obinna's silencing, how threats had cost him his sleep, how guilt had cost him his joy. "Ebube, Obinna, I was wrong," he said, adjusting his tie. "I thought silence protected me. I thought loyalty meant obedience. But the truth, I feared it. I feared Obinna. I feared what the people would say." He wept, shoulders shaking, hands clasped in front of him. He did not know cameras recorded. That night, Chika got a tip, a video file from an anonymous insider. The footage, Adebayo in confession, over a hidden microphone, voice broken. Chika's heart pounded as she uploaded it. It went live. The confession spread like wildfire. Screenshots, audio clips, unofficial channels all broadcasting. Adebayo's confessions leaked. By late night, security vans outside Adebayo's mansion, journalists circling, the president's aides issuing statements. At midnight, house arrest was imposed. Adebayo's movements restricted, his phones tapped, his car parked in the compound driveway with guards posted. Ebube, once a humble teacher, awoke to messages of support, people calling her voice of the silenced. Lawyers rallied, NGOs offered legal aid. A national reform panel was established. The president declared Ebube chair of the panel on educational ethics and transparency. Ebube, in modest dress, dark skin shining with both fatigue and purpose, accepted the role out of sense of duty. Chika beside her, Obinna recovering in safe housing, but in the shadows, certain names stirred. Alhaji Mukhtar, powerful and elusive, met with his old associates. In the hush of smoke-filled rooms, he listened to news reports. His expression cold. He vowed to not be undone so easily. Alhaji Mukhtar vows, "This is far from over." The first bell rang at exactly 7:45 a.m. This time, the windows were no longer cracked. The desks were new, the walls freshly painted, the flag outside fluttering proudly in the morning breeze. Over the school gate, in bright, elegant letters, was the name, Obinna Community School for Integrity. Ebube Nwokedi stood just inside the doorway of her old classroom, chalk in hand. Her weathered sandals had been replaced by comfortable flats, but she kept a pair of the old ones on a shelf by her desk as a quiet symbol. The room filled slowly with students, some new, others returning eyes wide, curious, reverent. They had heard the stories. Everyone had. When the principal introduced her on the first day, many students rose and clapped instinctively. "She's the woman who changed the country," one whispered. She hushed them with a soft smile and a lifted hand. "I'm just your teacher," she said. "But every one of you could change the world too." Though she had returned to her humble role as a teacher, Ebube now wore several other hats. Twice a week, she lectured at the University of Ibadan, teaching a seminar titled Courage in Public Ethics. Law students, journalists, policy majors, young minds hungry for change sat at her feet, asking questions with urgency. Her story was now a case study, a lesson in civic courage. Her chalkboard now shared space with data projectors and digital tools, but the soul of her teaching remained the same. Truth. With Chika's help, they launched a national foundation for whistleblowers. They called it Voices in the Dust. The name came from Obinna's diary, where he once wrote, "Even if I die in the dust, may my voice rise like the wind." Their foundation offered legal protection, psychological support, relocation aid, and confidential channels for exposing corruption. In 6 months, it processed over 50 credible cases. Chika, now a nationally celebrated journalist, continued producing hard-hitting documentaries, but her proudest title was co-founder of a movement born from dust, grief, and fire. Obinna, still recovering, relocated to Ghana on medical advice. Quiet, slower life. He wrote daily, pouring his story into a manuscript that would eventually become Betrayal in Broad Daylight. Every week he called Ebube just to hear her voice. "You were the reason I survived," he always said. International attention poured in. Donors from Sweden, Canada, and South Africa funded whistleblower shelters. NGOs invited Ebube to lead panels. When the United Nations invited her to speak at a global summit on anti-corruption and civic justice in Geneva, she hesitated. "Do I even belong there?" she asked Chika. Chika just smiled. "You taught in torn sandals. You fought with chalk. You belong more than anyone." At the summit, Ebube stood before flags of 150 nations. Her voice shook at first, but soon steadied. She spoke not of power or glory, but of classrooms, of lost brothers, of how even a broken desk could hold a revolution. Her final words silenced the room. "The chalk is mightier than the gun." She returned to Nigeria to a hero's welcome, but she kept her focus grounded. Every Thursday, she sat with mothers who had lost their sons to corruption, military raids, or political cover-ups. Together they built a database of names, faces never aired on news, now honored with dignity. Every visit brought tears, stories that echoed hers. She never offered false hope, only solidarity. And her presence, always soft-spoken but steel-strong, was more than comfort, it was proof that they mattered. One afternoon, 3 of her former students visited the new school. Now university scholars, they brought her flowers. "You taught us that silence is the real enemy," one of them said, eyes brimming. "You gave us more than lessons, you gave us courage." She held their hands for a moment. "Then promise me you'll give it to others too." Later that day, as the sun dipped low, Ebube wandered alone into the old staff, the room renovated now but still echoing with memories. Her fingers traced the smooth wood of a new teacher's desk. As she sat down, something tugged at her memory, the faintest feeling of déjà vu. She opened the drawer slowly. Inside was an envelope. A plain one. No markings. Only 5 handwritten words across the flap. "To the next brave one." Inside, a new desk drawer. She finds a second envelope addressed to the next brave one. Darkness gathered behind closed doors in Abuja and Lagos. Men in tailored agbadas and expensive suits gathered in private rooms, speaking in low tones. Alhaji Mukhtar, powerful and foreboding, was there. Beside him, shadow elites, ministers whose names had appeared in Obina's letters, developers whose estates had grown on land once promised to schools, judges who had issued quiet dismissals, commissioners who never acted. They shared drinks, smoke curling from cigars, power humming in their veins. They had been shaken but not broken. They whispered of how Ebube's influence had grown, how protests flooded the streets, how journalists everywhere had stopped being afraid. They planned strategy, how to dismantle her credibility, how to leak disinformation, how to freeze funding, how to isolate Chika, how to make people forget. The godfathers plotted in dim light. Meanwhile, Ebube slept little. Anonymous threats began anew. Emails from dark addresses. "Your foundation is funded by lies." Packages delivered to her doorstep, harmless at first, flowers, then broken phones, then blood-stained gloves. Shadows followed her when she left her house. Cars with dark tinting parked too close. But Ebube kept walking. To classrooms, to university lectures, to meetings. Her face resolved. Her resolve hardened. One day, the foundation's servers were breached. Chika received messages from her tech team. Documents leaked, backup compromised. Sensitive files, client cases, evidence of abuse, correspondence with pastors, leaked into the streets. False claims began circulating in social media that Ebube fabricated parts of Obina's story. The godfathers turned their strategy to character assassination. Their voices grew louder. Soon, tragedy struck. A respected senator, who had quietly supported whistleblowing reforms, was exposed in one of the leaked files, a name linked to a scandal. The backlash was swift. The senator, distraught, retreated from public life. The next morning, newspapers whispered, "Suicide." It was front page in some tabloids, others more discreet. The fear rippled. What happens when even those who stand quietly are crushed? Obina, though recovering, knew he could not remain distant. Under Chika's careful arrangement, he returned secretly to Nigeria, traveled covertly, changed appearance, moved at night. He visited Ebube's school, walked among students unseen. His eyes took in the renovated walls, the banners, the repaired desks. He touched the chalkboard once. He was home in spirit, if not yet in public. Godfathers tried bribery. Chika was offered unimaginable sums if she said the leaks and documents were fake, if she publicly recanted. But she refused. She told them, "Truth doesn't bend for money." A week later, she got a call that her mother was hospitalized. Cause, stress-induced heart attack, doctors said. Chika rushed to her bedside, dark skin pale in hospital lights, her mother's voice thin. "Be brave." Chika squeezed her hand, resolve steeling again. Ebube, seeing these threats, stood before the Senate one afternoon. Gallery packed, reporters live. She read a prepared speech, not just for her brother, not just for herself, but for every teacher, every child silenced. "We demand legal protections for teachers, for whistleblowers, for the silenced majority." She quoted law, quoted the Constitution, quoted morality. The Senate hall echoed. A new law was drafted, the Educator Integrity Bill, to protect teachers from reprisals, to enforce transparency in teacher hiring, land allocations for schools, property ownership. But even with the bill passed, the elites struck back. Funding sources were frozen, international donors withdrew, some under pressure, local philanthropists silenced, foundation offices faced tax audits, bank accounts flagged, costs soared. Some staff resigned in fear. The movement seemed to be losing momentum as threats mounted. Then, as all seemed dark, at Ebube's school one afternoon, a small group of teenage girls gathered under the mango tree in the compound. They passed around scraps of paper, folded secretly. They called themselves the envelope. They wrote letters, published underground newsletters, circulated in USB sticks, in WhatsApp groups. Their writing was raw, their fear visible, yet their courage shone. They laughed softly, remembering the image of the envelope, the story, the demand for truth. They were young but determined to carry the legacy forward. A group of teenage girls at Ebube's school start their own underground newsletter titled The Envelope. 5 years had passed. Nigeria's classroom bells rang differently now. Walls once crumbling were repaired, chalkboards wiped clean of grime. In every public school, there was an ethics desk, a small glass cabinet containing a reporter's notebook, posters about whistleblower rights, a copy of the Educator Integrity Bill framed, and the repaired shoes of Obinna and Ebube displayed behind glass. Teachers taught not only arithmetic or biology, but also accountability, courage, and truth. The country had begun to transform, though not without resistance. Still, in every corner the old shadows tried to creep in, but light held them back. Ebube Nwokedi walked through the corridors of a government office in Abuja, her office now as Commissioner for Educational Ethics. Her skin rich, ebony, eyes worn but steady. She wore a simple but elegant outfit, a modest dress in dark, green braided hair pulled back, a pin of a key on her lapel, symbolic desk key. She oversaw policies, regular audits of school lands, transparent fund allocation, teacher protection laws, whistleblower-safe ports in every state. She listened to reports, set processes in motion, held meetings with state governors. She did this not for glory, but because memory demanded it. Obinna, her brother, had recovered. Though his body bore scars, physical and emotional, he had found strength in story. His memoir, From Desk to Dungeon, was a bestseller across Africa. He was invited to lecture globally, in Johannesburg, Nairobi, Accra, London. On stage, he spoke of his fear, his disappearance, his brotherly love, his belief in things better. Audiences sat enraptured. Dark-skinned students holding their books tight, mothers wiping tears, young journalists scribbling notes. He was no longer hidden. He was a voice. Chika had built a media network now, Voices in the Envelope, spotlighting grassroots heroes, teachers who saved schools from collapse, students who refused bribes, whistleblowers who risked all. Her skin, the same dark ebony, hair natural, dress bright, strong presence. She traveled to remote villages, recording stories others ignored. She trained young reporters. Her media empire was not about profit, it was about justice. The Envelope newsletter, once an underground newsletter written secretly by teenage girls under a mango tree, now had a published edition, won a national award for investigative journalism. It had stories of farms, schools, corruption, redemption. Girls who had read it as children now contributed pieces. The newsletter's masthead had a small icon, an envelope with a broken lock. Flashbacks. Every Monday, Ebube still walked into her old classroom, soft morning light. Wooden desks polished, windows open, the repaired school gate swinging. She placed a single envelope on a student's desk. She would lean in, voice soft, "You're enough." Sometimes it was for the student sitting there. Sometimes it was for herself. The gesture small, but powerful. A reminder that courage can begin in quiet moments. Ebube visited Obinna's grave one overcast afternoon. Tombstone polished, regiments of flowers. The repaired desk key, now famous, symbol of the old desk where everything began, rested gently beside his name, etched in stone. Obinna Nwokedi, lover of truth. The wind whispered through trees. She knelt, fingers trembling, pressed the key against his stone. Tears in her eyes, but also light in her chest. "We built this together," she said. That evening, In a large hall filled with young teachers from all over Nigeria, some from remote rural schools, some from city schools, Ebube once taught in, she stood at a podium. The repaired shoes were displayed behind her in glass, the envelope on a small stand nearby. Her dark ebony skin in soft golden light, clothes simple but dignified, faces in crowd looked up to her with respect, love, determination. She spoke, voice resonant. Truth doesn't sleep. Sometimes it hides in desks, waiting for the brave. Silence over the hall, then applause. Teachers nodded. Students held up shoes. The echo of that small act of courage rippled outwards. One envelope didn't just bring down a minister, it rebuilt a nation. If this story moved you, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more powerful, true-to-life Nigerian dramas. Drop your thoughts in the comments. What would you do if you found an envelope like that? Share this video with someone who believes in truth, justice, and change. Hit the notification bell so you never miss the next story that speaks truth to power.